this is Nayiri from Low Carbon Fasting. This episode is part of the series on this channel called Type 1 Diabetics Talk, where both host and guest are Type 1s, and we come together to discuss, you guessed it, Type 1 diabetes. Today's guest is a certified diabetes educator, and she is the founder of Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation in India. So Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation is there to educate, engage, empower, and create a safe space for people with diabetes while also working on diabetes awareness and advocacy in India. Nupur Lalvani, welcome to Low Carbon Fasting.
Thank you so much, Nayiri. It's lovely to be here, and such beautiful flowers behind you, and a lovely day. Happy to join this chat today with you.
Well, it's officially spring now, right?
Correct.
What's the weather like in India?
Oh, where I am, it's pretty hot. It's already warming up, and pretty much summer already.
Right.
Yeah.
Which part of India are you in?
I'm in the West, in Mumbai and Pune.
Right. Okay. Nupur, let's start off with your type 1 diagnosis story. Were you diagnosed as a child, or was it
Yes.
another case? As a child, like me, yeah.
Yeah. So I was 8 years old when I was diagnosed, and I had all the classical symptoms of type 1 diabetes. It's just that we didn't know as a family. So my parents didn't know. I have a younger sister who was an infant when I was diagnosed. So it was a stressful time for my parents. And it was my father actually, who noticed, something was wrong. My parents kept seeing all the symptoms and they thought of, everything else. I mean, they were wondering if there are any psychological issues, if I was wetting the bed at night. So they were worried, I had nightmares. I was eating a lot. So they were, happy with that. But I wasn't putting on any weight, and, all of the usual telltale signs were there. Then we went in. My father noticed that each time I would use the washroom, there would be black ants around the WC. And so he said, "Well, I know this is an old wives' tale, but that seems like it's diabetes." And so we went to get tested, and when I went to the pathology lab with my parents, they drew blood, and when we went back to take the report, they said everything's normal. The child is okay. And at that point, my father was very upset with them, and he said, I know something's wrong with my child, and you need to test again. So we tested again. We tested at another lab, and my blood sugars were 636, which I don't really remember what that is in millimoles, but it's high, and that's how I was diagnosed.
Wow. What do you think was wrong with the first test?
I don't know. I think that they either they may have mixed up my blood sample with somebody, or they may have assumed, what can happen to a child. I don't know. It's just terrible. But I'm glad to be alive, and I'm
Yeah,
here.
that's kind of similar to my story. I was diagnosed at 5. So,
Oh,
were you put on, so you would have been put on insulin straight away?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember what insulin it was back then?
Yeah. I was on regular and NPH.
All right. So then, are you still using those?
So I still use regular because I'm, with low carb. Regular really works well with meat and low
Yes.
carb foods. So now use regular and Novo Rapid, and then I use Lantus or Glargine.
Hmm.
Yeah,
For your long acting.
yeah,
Right. I'm on a pump, so I try to keep things simple,
yeah,
but it's good. Okay. So you said meat. Do you
yeah,
eat meat?
yeah. I eat
You
meat in
do.
all meals actually. Eggs and meat. I wouldn't be able to do without it.
Right, right. I mean, it is challenging, right? Because you're cutting out all the grains, all the starches, and you be nutritionally deficient if you're not
Exactly.
eating animal proteins. So, is it challenging in India to adopt a meat eating, a meat-based diet?
It is a little challenging because I think that some years ago, so it's for me, it's been about 9 years on low carb. I accidentally stumbled across the name of Dr. Bernstein online, and I'm really glad I did. And found the amazing community, RD and everyone else at Type 1 Grit, and that really saved my life. I was heading straight towards diabetes complications. So it is challenging for us in India a little bit because the reference point we have is the West, and the way of eating and the diet in the West is a little different to what we are used to here. So that way it is a little bit challenging, but it wasn't a problem for me because it was the way that I wanted to change my blood sugars and achieve like normoglycemia, and so I was ready to do whatever it takes to get to that point. And I think that for anyone looking to start low carb in India, it's really not hard. You just have to be open-minded, think of good alternative, ingredients, and there's like you can do anything. You can still have regular Indian food, and just tweak it a little bit to suit the low carb guidelines.
Right. I so when I first started low carb, I was vegetarian.
Wow.
I'd been
Okay.
vegan for a couple of years before that, and that I really felt horrible, like I was unwell. But when I discovered low carb and I started it 10 years ago, 2015, I was a vegetarian. I didn't eat meat, but as a vegetarian, I ate lots of dairy, I ate eggs, and surprisingly, it was easy. It was easy, even on a vegetarian diet. It was relatively easy. You just have to stop the fear of cholesterol and the fear
Correct.
of eggs and just enjoy as many as you possibly can to satisfy, your hunger and get the protein that you need. I got my proteins from Greek yogurt or yogurt and dairy and eggs. So it is doable on a vegetarian diet. Um, what do you eat
So
on
I
a
eat
daily basis?
Yeah. I usually eat 2 meals a day because as a sedentary adult, I'm just not that hungry anymore. Nairi, I mean, you definitely would remember back in the day, doctors telling us to eat 6 meals a day. And, despite eating 6 meals, I was still hungry because I was basically eating just carbs at every meal and snack. But since moving to low carb, I've also been intermittent fasting for no other reason other than I'm quite full. I don't feel the need to eat breakfast. So I have my first meal around noon, and I love eggs. So I have, 3 or 4 eggs at noon and in any style, and there are hundreds of things you can do with eggs. So that keeps me, well, quite busy and, not bored. And then I have dinner at about 7 o'clock or so, and that's usually meat and vegetables. So sometimes it's in a little Indian way, maybe like like chicken or butter chicken or some sort of gravy, or sometimes it's grilled meat and meat, chicken or fish or vegetables, that sort of combination. But I definitely do protein and vegetables for dinner and eggs for my first meal. And if ever I feel the need to snack, and then I have, maybe sometimes I have some nuts or a little bit of dark chocolate, or I make something at home. So I feel quite satisfied and not at all deprived of anything.
Right, true. I mean, there's no deprivation with it. There is no deprivation. Um, there are countless recipes online. If someone is considering a low carb diet, countless, numerous recipes. And the ingredients, I find that they are more readily available now. Because when I first started, I used to look up ingredients. Oh, you can make bread with almond flour. And even here in the UK,
Yeah.
in London, 10
Yeah.
years ago, you couldn't get coconut flour. I mean, I
Wow.
couldn't even get coconut flour, right? Um, so I had to order on Amazon, and they were terribly expensive, exotic ingredients. Now they're everywhere. Now they're everywhere and
Love it.
relatively affordable. So, um, but if you just stick to real foods, so do you eat all types of meat, or is it including beef?
I do eat all types of meat, but in India, the availability of certain meats is a problem due to many, cultural and religious
Yes.
and other issues. So I usually have what's easily available, and so I end up eating a lot of chicken, fish. So that's usually a staple for me. But yeah, I think, like you said, earlier, Nairi, it just makes it a lot easier. It gives you a lot more options, and protein options especially. But then, like you said, there's no even vegetarians can definitely do low carb. For my mother, for example, is vegetarian, so she's always been vegetarian, and everybody at home does low carb, and it is doable. Like, you've got yogurt, you've got a little bit of lentils, and some stuff maybe we may not want to eat. If, like, for example, if I'm eating meat, I may not want to do lentils, but that's something one can sort of try and see what works for them.
Yeah, it is. So my best friend here
Yeah.
in the UK. So my best friend is from Punjab region,
Oh, nice.
and so they eat meat except beef.
Yeah.
So I mean, here in the UK we have lots of lamb, right? So every meal, almost every meal, has either chicken in it or lamb. So it's
Wow.
one or the other. So say they eat meat. So it's interesting when people say, "Oh, I can't." I think maybe there are sort of family pressures. If yeah, family pressures.
Correct. That's true. And I think food is something, I mean, we eat many times a day. Even if you do intermittent fasting, you eat at least 2 times a day for your whole entire life. So that's a very repetitive activity. And I think that sometimes when people are not familiar with how a kitchen works, maybe somebody's not used to cooking, or they've never, they've always had takeout or something, then they don't know what goes into the food. They don't know what help to ask for, or if they have a cook at home, or if they have somebody at home who helps them with the cooking, they don't know what to tell them. So I think a lot of problem even starts there, not knowing what to, like, practically what to eat or what to make in the kitchen.
And this is why Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation is full of resources. People, the website will be below, so go and check out their website. There are tons of resources there. Nupur, one of the things India is well known for, and it's so similar to my own culture, is the family gatherings around food. Food plays a major role. So when you are in an event that involves food or sitting around food, how do you tackle the issue of what do I eat? Because there may not be anything to eat there. So what do you
Yeah,
do?
yeah.
I
I
have
think
my own ways to address that, but I'm interested to find out how you do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is such an amazing, question and discussion, because for cultures where, like you said, family and food is, like a very important point, it gets really challenging because people want to do low carb, or they want to try it, but then there are all these barriers that are, social or cultural problems of, not being able to say no. Um, for example, in India, if you have a guest, most people would force their guest. I mean, of course, now things are changing, but it's a sign of good hospitality to force your guests to eat. And I find that really stressful. Like, even if I didn't have diabetes, I would find it very stressful to be forced to eat something. I don't like it. But I have found my ways, and so instead of focusing only on the food, I focus on the people and the opportunity to reconnect connect with friends and family and talk to them and really, enjoy being together rather than just eating something all the time. And then I also focus on picking what works for me. So if there are 10 options, I'm sure there'll be at least two that I can, I can have. Maybe I could have nuts, or I could have salad or something. Sometimes I'm even open to carrying food, from home. So if it's like a sort of a potluck or something, I can bring something that works for me and that maybe other people will hopefully like as well. And I think it's very important to assert, what works for you. Sometimes we feel like we are a good guest if we accept everything that the host gives us, but the host is doing their job, and to take care of our own body. If that means that we have to refuse some food, I think it's okay. I was not comfortable doing this earlier, but now I feel quite okay in telling them that I don't want to eat this, and I'm going to eat something else, and don't worry, I will make myself comfortable. You don't need to worry about me. So I try and sort of put my needs without bothering the host.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same. So initially you feel a little bit intimidated, and you're not even kind of, I don't know about you, but I used to feel kind of embarrassed because it's so unusual, right? To tell
Right.
people I don't eat rice, I don't eat bread, I don't like, what do you eat, right? So now, I mean, certainly my own family, so my close friends, they know that I follow a special diet because of my diabetes.
Yeah.
So that it's not because I just fancy that sort of diet. So they respect that. So they don't question. They know it's better for my diabetes and blood sugars. But I always take a dish with me, um, just in case they don't
Yeah.
have enough. Because people say, "Oh, I made this meat dish for you," and then you look and there's rice in it too. It's all mixed up together. It's like
Yeah.
they don't really understand. Oh, meatballs I made. One of my relatives invited us the other day. She'd made meatballs especially for me, and there were potatoes in it
Wow.
as a
Okay.
thickener, and she hadn't
Yeah.
even
Thought
thought.
of
Yeah. Um, Nupur, why is your family doing low carb with you?
So when I started, low carb, I actually, a little backstory is that I began to develop early stage complications. This was about 10 years ago, like background retinopathy, and there was a little scare when I did my blood test with my kidneys, and the kidney test turned out to be okay. It was a false alarm, but I did have, non-proliferative retinopathy, and that's what led me to look for a solution. And unfortunately, I know this story is common to many of us who've had diabetes for very long. For me, it's been about 30 years now with type 1 diabetes. And, I just didn't know that there is a way to manage it properly. So two things really changed my approach. One was when I used a CGM for the first time about 10 years back. I saw my blood sugars after eating a healthy homemade meal of, like, roti, which is bread, and rice and everything. And my blood sugars were like crazy. So that was the first time my eyes really, like, popped open, and I knew something's wrong. And the second was, when when I developed non-proliferative retinopathy, and then looked up the internet, found Dr. Bernstein, read his book, The Diabetes Solution, which really, truly, I mean, I hate to be dramatic, but it changed my life. So my HbA1c at the time of developing complications was about 6.2 or 6.3, which is supposedly good. And I've had years of much higher A1Cs before that. So I wasn't always, in the sixes. Then I read Dr. Bernstein's book, brought my A1C down to 5.2, and then went back next year to get my eyes tested. And the ophthalmologist told me that, you're all clear. You've reversed your early stage complications, and whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. They didn't bother to, they didn't have the time or inclination to ask me what you did, but they said, it's working, and just stick to what you're doing, and you don't have background retinopathy anymore. So for me, that was, you know, I don't care if somebody if somebody locks me in a room with cake, I am not going to touch it because I know the value of, this way of eating. It's changed my life. And my family was seeing all this all along, and they weren't low carb at that time. But in a year or two, my entire family, and no one has diabetes, my immediate family, they all transitioned. My sister, who's younger than me, my parents, so everybody transitioned to low carb, and my parents had pre-diabetes, which would have eventually turned into type 2, but they were able to, bring back their A1C to a non-diabetic range. So everyone benefited, and ever since, I mean, it's been about like I think 8 years, almost 8 years for my family as well, and everyone's different. So my mother's vegetarian, the rest of us eat meat, but we manage, So I tell a lot of people, if we can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was diagnosed in 1978, so I was at the hospital. I can't remember how many nights I stayed there, but when we returned home, my mother had a piece of paper with her from the doctor with red list foods and orange and green. So all the greens were like vegetables and dairy, meat, fish, all was in the green list. And in the orange list, it was rice and bread and that sort of things that I could have, but in limited portions.
Yeah.
And the red list was all the junk foods and the desserts and the cakes. And that wasn't unusual. So I remember that piece of paper being in the kitchen for years and years, and everyone. I lived with my extended family. So I had grandparents. I had my unmarried, at the time, unmarried uncle and auntie in the house, in the same household. We all ate similar foods. The red list foods didn't even exist in my house. I mean, no one ate the red list foods. So my birthday cakes, I remember, because they were once a year on my birthday, my mother would make a cake.
Wow.
So everyone did the same. And of course, I had type 2 diabetes in my family. My grandpa had type 2 diabetes. So it was good for him too. Everyone ate the same way. So I don't know. I get offended when people now say, oh, low carb, it's a fad diet. It's like, it's the latest trend. It's going to come and go. It was always there. I grew up with it.
Correct. I love it. I mean, it's just amazing, right? Something changed along the way. And you're right, the word fad diet really triggers me as well. It's something that's been there forever. So it's not a fad diet at all. And in cultures where, rice and breads are more common, in Indian food as well, about 70% of food is, breads like roti or naan or something, and a lot of rice. It does take a little bit of getting used to, to think that originally you think that these are healthy things. I've made it at home. Why is it not healthy? But then when you see the CGM and when you see the impact, and when you realize there's no, sort of, there's no solid way to manage these foods. You could have a fluke one day. You could have a pizza or a bowl of rice and have a flat line, but that won't happen every day, right? So if you want something solid and predictable, then low carb is really the only way.
Correct. And it is a healthier way.
Yeah.
It is, because if you look at the pure nutrition from your diet, you're not getting your nutrition from the roti and the other foods and the rice. You're
Yeah.
getting your nutrition from the eggs and the fish. Nupur, you mentioned CGM. So how easy is it to obtain CGMs? And if my understanding is correct, none of your diabetes products are paid for by the government, right? There's no such thing in in India,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Hmm.
correct. Unfortunately, we keep referencing the NHS when we talk to our policymakers. We see the NHS has this, and see, this is what a public healthcare system should look like. But unfortunately, we don't have CGMs, no question, insulin pumps, no question. We have to pay out of pocket for these things. But in certain public hospitals, the poor, they get insulin for free. So in India, health is a state subject, and each state decides what they want to give for free or not free. So people they may get regular insulin or mixed insulin for free. But that depends on the availability in the public hospital, and it is mostly only for the poor. So if you're not poor, if you're middle class, or you're rich, you're not getting it. Some states in India have started giving analog insulin for free as well. But there are a lot of challenges, and our community members in those states tell us the problems that they face. There's a problem in distribution. There's a problem in availability. So it hasn't really sort of settled into a nice system yet. So there is a challenge with obtaining diabetes technology, because it comes at a cost, and I have to choose between, do I want to invest my money in a pump or a CGM? And I certainly choose a CGM. So I use syringes, because I've actually never used a pen. That's the funny thing. When I was diagnosed, we didn't have pens. I think there were no pens. I'm not sure. At least I didn't. I don't remember ever getting a pen or using a pen. So I use syringes, and I still use syringes, but I have used an insulin pump for about 6 years. And then I had to pay for it out of pocket, and it's like buying a car, so it is expensive. And then when my pump stopped working, I had to decide whether I want to purchase a new pump or I need to go back to syringes. So I thought, let me try syringes again, because I've used it for so many years. And I was able to maintain my HbA1c the same way on syringes as the pump. So I thought, no problem. I'll just, use what I have. And even with CGMs, Nairi, there's a problem in India, because we used to have something called the Libre Pro by Abbott, which is a product that wasn't launched in the Western world. It was only launched in China and India about 10 years ago. And the Libre Pro is a blinded device. The doctor puts it on the patient, and the patient comes back after 15 days, and the doctor takes the reading. So that's the device I've been using for 10 years. But there are ways and there are tricks and tips to use it so that you can get real-time readings. As diabetics, we know there's a workaround for
Yes.
everything. So we were using those ways, but unfortunately, the company has now pulled out that product from the market. So that product used to cost about $30. And now we are left without a choice but to pay $60 for the Libre 1 sensor. And, paying that money out of pocket twice a month is a lot for most of us. So that's part of the work we do at the NGO at Blue Circle. We try and speak to companies, to policymakers, to the press about the issues that people are facing, and try and highlight these problems.
One of the things that India's also known for and respected for is their advancement in tech.
Yeah.
I mean, any company here, if you look at their tech guys, they're all Indians.
Yeah.
So what
True.
surprises me is that there aren't Indian products available on the market
Yeah.
that you could purchase uh, much cheaper. And it would be local and available. So what do you think is happening there? What is there a lack of interest or lack of knowledge?
I think there is certainly some problem, because a lot of the products, so there are a few Chinese CGMs now in the market, and I know, for the West, for the UK or for the US or Europe, I mean, I mean, you guys have the Dexcom and the Libre and these options, but I think the other options, the Chinese options, are popping up in India and in other low and middle income countries because these products are unavailable and unaffordable for most of us. And you're right. I mean, a lot of the tech guys that work in IT, in the Silicon Valley, anywhere, are all Indian. So it's really surprising. I think it's there also needs to be government support to set up industry, and the government does talk about wanting to have Indian companies, but it's really a big question mark as to why in medical devices maybe the process is very long and tedious, but currently there's really nothing available by Indian companies.
That's interesting because I mean CGM, the technology behind a CGM isn't that challenging. I know manufacturing pumps, for example, will be a lot more challenging, but the CGM cannot be that challenging. But I'd like to see that in India. So let's come to insulins. So again, all the insulins are probably either Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk insulins, right?
Yeah, that's right. Eli Lilly, Novo. There are some Indian companies as well. There's one called Biocon actually that sells internationally, also in Europe and America. It's an Indian company that actually, maybe, I don't know, I'm not very sure, but I think they do a large volume of business in the West. So they also make generic insulin, and this is something that really interests me because it brings the cost down for the person who's living with diabetes. And in countries where we have to pay out of pocket, in maybe many countries in Africa, in India, in Pakistan, Bangladesh, this matters to the patient because the healthcare system can't support us fully, and so the price of things really make a difference. So there are some good things that are happening. For example, the Indian government since many years has a chain of generic pharmacies. They're called Jan Aushadhi Kendra. And across the country, there are about 8 or 10,000 such pharmacies. And these pharmacies sell generic medicines, including insulin. So, I get Lantus is basically Glargine, right? So
Yes.
I get Glargine, I get a cartridge for, as cheap as like $4. Um, and that's not bad at all. And I know for certain other parts of the world, like the US and other parts, it's a different type of problem. If you're not insured, you're really in big trouble. So
But that's
that's
very positive
good.
to hear, very positive to hear. So it's relatively easy to access insulin, right? So you can just walk into a pharmacy and buy any insulin that you like in India, or do you need a prescription and all that hassle?
No, you don't need a
No.
prescription. You can walk in and they might ask you for a prescription, but I think in 99% of the cases, you should be able to walk in and buy any insulin of your choice. If you have the money, you can get anything.
Yeah. Right. Nupur, tell us about Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation. What
Yes.
inspired you? What pushed you? What motivated you to get involved with? In fact, you're the founder. That's a big, ambitious project to have started. Tell me about the beginnings of that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, Blue Circle is a patient-led organization. We are a charity, a registered NGO in India.
Mhm.
And initially, it just started because, well, I'd moved cities, from my home city to another city nearby for work. And the few people that I knew with diabetes, I wasn't in contact with them anymore because I was physically in a different city. And so that got me thinking, diabetes. I have learned more from the diabetes online community than I've learned from any doctor or anything else. And I mean, I can see your smile, and I know that's true probably for you as well. Yeah. So I just felt like there needs to be some seamless way that people can stay in touch with each other. And there was no online community in India for diabetes at that point. There were some localized communities, but they were mostly physical. And they were, led by doctors and by professionals. So that's really how it started. And then, so now we're not just online, we're on Facebook, of course. We have a Facebook group called Diabetes Support Network India. But other than that, we've also got physical chapters in various cities and states. So people can, sometimes people meet up for a run, or they meet up for coffee, or, find a way to stay in touch with each other. And there's a lot of things we do. We reach out to public and private schools. We conduct diabetes awareness programs because India also happens to have the highest number of young people with type 1 diabetes now. So we have a big population, and so the burden of diabetes is increasing. We run a free helpline for people that they can reach out to. We have a mobile app where people can log their blood sugar readings. Their CGM can talk to the mobile app. There's a lot of like cool stuff, AI and things like that. So a lot of exciting things, and yeah, it's wonderful to be able to meet other diabetics, talk to them, learn from them, help new people. So that's generally what we do.
It's very exciting, and I love the website. It's so rich with resources. Where did you get the funding from?
So when we started out, Nayiri, there was nothing. I mean, I had recently quit my job a few years ago, and I didn't have a plan. I thought, well, I'm not sure what I'm doing with my life, and maybe it's time to take a little break. Maybe 1 or 2 months, and see what to do before I find another job. And I wasn't used to sitting. I just constantly need to do something. So I started visiting a local hospital and hanging out in the OPD, and the nurses would ask me, "Why are you here? Are you here to see a doctor?" And I said, "No, I'm not here to see a doctor. Please, just let me, if it's okay with you, let me sit and talk to patients." And slowly, I started talking to other people, and I found friends, and so I like running, okay, and so just for fun, I said to the other people, "Do you guys want to go for a run?" And so the plan with the run, it snowballed into like 120 people showing up for a Sunday morning run. And that really got me thinking, that really got me thinking that people are not that excited to come to the clinic or to the doctor, but they are very excited to meet other friends and to learn from them and to talk about the real practical problems. What pump can I use? Is a pump really useful? How should I eat? I've got complications. Sometimes in India, another thing we help people with is, finding a partner, because in the Indian sort of culture, arranged marriages are very common, and people are unable to find a partner. So that's also something that people find when they join the community. They've been So we didn't have funding when we started any of this. It was just an idea. And even now, we're just very slowly only just trying to, look for funding and ways that we can get help to make this sustainable. Because I think we're at a point where we cannot shut it down now. It's taken off, and people are liking it. They're benefiting. And I've learned so many things along the way, and the one thing I know for sure is that to keep this sustainable, to keep it going, it needs money, it needs funding. So that is now something that we are trying to look at and do. So the website that you saw, and the mobile app that we have as well. We've met over the years people who have selflessly dedicated their time and effort. So the person who made our platform also has a family member with diabetes, which is why he helped out with that. And there are volunteers who organize meetups in different cities and, put in their time. So currently, a lot of the thing is just due to the efforts of other people, but we hope to be able to, soon make it more sustainable in the future.
Mm-hmm. And you might even get private donations.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, certainly. I mean, money will kind of initiate many more projects, or will facilitate many more projects to actually happen. Nupur, is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
I think that I just want to congratulate you actually for talking about look, I know your channel's amazing, and you had Dr. Ian Lake also recently, and that was a really interesting discussion. I just want to tell people through your channel that please do consider, have an open mind, do consider low carb, learn from other people, and see how it works for you, because for diabetes you spend only 5% of the time with your doctor, and the rest of the time you're on your own. You are your own boss. So don't wait for someone to come and tell you that low carb is okay. Look at so many of us online, seek help. If that means you need coaching, you need hand holding, please take that help, because this is about your health. And I think that if you're healthy and you're happy, everything else can fall into place. That is the priority, really. So
I want
thank
to come back
you.
on a circle back to what you said earlier on about self-funding. So I'm a frequent traveler, so we travel to different countries. So when I'm outside the UK, I no longer have access to, my free supplies, right? My pump supplies, I'm on the pump and the CGM. So occasionally I'd have to pay out of pocket to purchase things. If I ever were to make the choice between pump and CGM, I'd give up on the pump. Um, I love my pump. I'm so
Yeah,
used to it. However, if I had to choose one or the other, because without a CGM, it's almost like you're driving on the roads completely blind.
yeah,
You have no idea of where your blood sugars are. And I've been there before CGMs. I'm sure you've been there too, right? We had
yeah,
the glucose meters, but how many times did I check my did I do the finger prick testing? I don't remember ever doing.
yeah.
It'd be the odd one when I was young. It'd be the odd one here and there, and that
Get it.
that was it. Um, yeah, even during my pregnancy, for example, again, it was pre-CGM, so it was very important. I knew it was very important to be on top of my blood sugars. I check about 12 to 14 times per day, and but that takes its toll, right? It's not easy.
That's true.
My fingertips would be completely blue and scarred after 14 tests per day. Um, so yeah, I couldn't do without my CGM. Definitely, that's for sure.
Nairi, we do these workshops, since the last 5 years we've been doing online workshops, and I was just thinking it's been on my mind since a while, to ask you if you'd like to join one of our workshops. We do these on Sundays at 5 p.m. India time, so that's probably, I don't know, like 1:30 for you. But I was just thinking what topic, but something came to my mind now when you said pregnancy and you tested your sugars 14 times, and that sort of thing. Maybe if that sounds okay to you, we can plan for some time, to do a workshop with you on pregnancy and diabetes.
Absolutely. That's not my kind of not particularly specialized in blood sugars during pregnancy. However, I've been there. I've done it. I have the experience. And so it'd be lovely to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. Or if there's anything else that comes to mind, if you feel that there's anything else that you'd like to talk about, I think it would be lovely to have you and to learn from your experience. I mean, you've had diabetes for how many years?
47.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, seeing all of the before and after of everything, technology, and
I've been through them. I've used the syringes before, and then the pens, and then the pump,
yeah, yeah.
um, blood sugar monitoring. I've even different types of insulin. I've used them
Wow.
all. I've used them all. I think I still believe in the older types of insulin that people call older, or
Yeah,
oh, why do you need regular insulin? You don't, that's
yeah,
old, you don't need it. Everyone should use rapid insulin, and because they're eating lots of carbs. And um, so I, I actually use rapid in my
yeah.
pump. but I have a way to dose for protein. So I found a way, but without the education, people struggle. Even on a low carb diet,
Yeah,
Nupur, even on a low carb diet, it's not magic.
correct.
Okay, your fluctuations might be a little less, but you still will have the highs and lows if you don't have the right knowledge on how to manage your insulin.
Yeah. That's true. So what's the most common, I know that you like coach people as well. What's the most, I don't know, common question or mistake that you feel, people make?
So some of my clients are type 1s. Now, with the type 1 community, the biggest mistake is not dosing for protein.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and people have just started keto and I'm taking so much less insulin, but I don't know why I'm having those highs. And sometimes the highs can go up to 200,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's high. People have like 16 in millimoles, so 16, and they're surprised. But I didn't eat any carb. You need to dose for protein.
Yeah,
I wish I knew that. Uh,
correct.
I didn't. We didn't. So most people don't know that. In fact, do you dose? Okay, so you're using regular insulin for protein, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Do you
So
do you take the
sorry.
fat into account?
Yes, yes. I use so in my syringe I draw like Novo Rapid, the fast rapid acting, and then I also draw regular into the same syringe. So that's another reason I prefer the syringe because I can mix two insulins, and I see a lot of people on online who do it also. So I think that is okay to do, and I find it really you're right, because we are taught by dietitians and by healthcare professionals that you don't need insulin for protein, and that's just wrong advice.
Yeah.
Maybe we could actually do a workshop on this topic.
Well, I'd love to. I'd love to.
So
Anyway,
happy to do
so
and
I have an Indian sister now, so I'm so pleased we
yes,
communicated. So stay in touch.
yes.
I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye,
Take
Nairi.
care. Bye bye.